We are live.
Right on.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Paul, how are you doing this evening or
Doing
afternoon?
well. Afternoon here
Yeah,
in Alaska.
yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. You're kind of almost the way through the week here. So what was on the tap today for you as a landlord?
Uh, that's a great question. This morning, today was kind of a nothing day. I kind of sat around, got this thing set up, fussed around with cameras. It didn't work. Ended up in front of the computer like I always do with the same stupid little webcam, and
Yep.
that's that. But we're getting ready to sell our house. So today was about getting bids and contracts for paving and some other projects need to get done.
Nice. Nice. Well, welcome to everyone that joins. I know we'll probably have the next few minutes as people log on, but appreciate everyone for taking the time to join us today and to learn from one of the wonderful people that we found online, one of the more eclectic personalities as far as focusing on happiness, longevity around the housing community, and has been in the game for a long time. So, Paul, thanks a lot for joining me today to have a bit of a discussion around being a landlord.
Well, just a pleasure. I like I've been doing this for about 35 years. I think I started my first duplex back in the late 80s. And, things have changed so much. And I thought later in life, what do you do for legacy? And that was part of this whole happy landlord thing and it was not about me being a happy landlord. It's about having other people become happy landlords. And there's a lot of stuff that had I known long ago, I would have been a lot happier those first 10 years. It got better, but that's
Yeah.
what I look forward to talking about today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we dive into that, because I want to start with your kind of origin story, as we could say, around getting into this. Just a bit of notes for everybody. I've got a few questions I want to talk with Paul about. We'll talk through his experience as a landlord, how to kind of maintain your properties, interact with tenants, focusing on some of those challenging situations. But of course, we also want to hear from you. So, the chat is live, or if you have a specific question that you want to ask, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. And either as we go through or at the end, I'll make sure to try and get those so we can ask Paul those questions. So feel free to be interactive. And again, thanks for joining. So Paul, let's start at the beginning. Tell us what got you into becoming a landlord. What was that first property like, and kind of how did you actually learn the ropes as you got into it?
I think like a lot of young people, I was early on, I was trying to figure out how to just live, how to get by and make money and provide for myself. And over the years that philosophy's kind of changed. But at the time it was just how do I live? And my goal was I wanted to live for free. And I had been in the military. I got out when I was 20 and a half. I went in young, went in at 17, got out a little bit early to work at a radio engineering job. I landed in Florida and kind of went to school part time, did oddball jobs, did a lot of entrepreneurial stuff that nothing ever quite panned out. And I just got to think pop up. Should I just?
Oh, it's just a poll for the you
Oh,
could, yeah, you
so,
don't need to answer that.
sorry guys, I'm learning this Zoom stuff too. I'll click that stuff off. But long story short, I was sitting there going, I ended up being a yacht broker and I was working down in South Florida, not doing great, but doing okay. And I said, I got to figure out how to live for free. And um, long time ago in California, I went to look at an apartment with a guy, Steve Newby, in Vallejo over on the eastern shore of the Bay Area. And this lady pulls up in this white Mercedes and she's wearing a white outfit. She's got the gold glasses and the whole bit and a cigarette. And whenever you get an opportunity to talk to somebody, I always talk to them, just question them down. And I asked her, I go, what's your advice? What do you think? And she goes, kid, people need three things: clothing, food, and shelter. I picked shelter, and I never forgot that. And she's right; those are the three things that just everyone needs. You go in the food business, whatever. You get the idea. That stuck with me. Then I was down in Florida. I said, if I can buy a little duplex, 2 units, and I can have roommates, my goal was to live for free. And I went out and like a lot of young folks, I didn't have a whole lot of money. I had my VA loan I could use. My parents gave me $7,000, which is the only inheritance I ever got. And I started going to realtors and I said, here's what I want to do. I want to live for free, buy a duplex. And I've told the story before. 13 realtors literally laughed me out of the office. I mean, embarrassing. And my encouragement to young landlords is just keep going to realtors because you're going to find that one. And I found this guy, Tim Wingerski, and Tim goes, we can do that. And he was an investor at the end of his career, like I am now. And we went out and we shopped around, found a little small town just north of West Palm, about a 30-minute drive from where I was working and going to school. And it was reasonable on the wrong side of A1A, Hobe Sound, Florida. and it was, I forget the price, but it was 60 some odd $1,000 at the time. I know times have changed, guys, but at the time that was what it was worth. And I bought it and I had to fix it up. And I got a roommate, Howard, and I got another. There was a big walk-in pantry off the kitchen. It was pretty big, like about 6 feet by maybe 10 feet. It wasn't huge. I could put a small bed in there. And I rented that out to this gal. I've forgotten her name. And the three of us lived there happy as clams for about 2 years. And I had a tenant next door, and I lived for free for 2 years. It worked out great. And I finally sold it and used the proceeds from that to go to college. I went to Florida State University, and then friends of mine all got their master's degrees, and I decided I want to get that too. So I went to Maine Maritime to get an MBA, and finished that. I can give you an MBA story on how to be an MBA in 30 seconds if you want to at some point. What I got out of that whole experience, and then I was too old, 27, kind of unemployable as a young MBA, and a buddy of mine was up in Alaska, and he said, "Hey, get up here. I got a." Well, my wife hates this story. Sorry, honey. I got a place for you to live, a job for you, and a gal for you. I lived in the place, took the job, still have the gal, and she's awesome. Awesome. And that was a start. And I basically worked for him as a day laborer for about a year while I just figured out how to buy more buildings up here. And then, we'll get into all that, when we talk about, building your crew.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
kind of,
I mean, you started getting into it, you kind of build some skill sets and started to go through. So like, you talk a lot about kind of being a happy landlord. Like as you watch your videos or dive deeper into you realize there's a lot about balance and finding things. Was that intentional when you set up? Have you always had kind of this mindset around building people around, building community and those sort of aspects, or has that shifted a lot as you've gone through?
No, I think I learned by wiring. I'm primarily, I would say I'm a salesman. So I had a lot of sales training early on in my career when I was working in the yacht brokerage. I sold everything. I sold suntan lotion. I sold a bunch of stuff, cars, boats, everything. And so when you get the sales training, I would encourage young people to, this is the old school stuff, but nothing's changed. The Zig Ziglar, the Dale Carnegies, all those guys, good quality sales training. And you naturally become wired to meet objections, to hear people's concerns, to try to solve problems, and it just becomes part of your DNA. And when you have that, when you're dealing with tenants, tenants are primarily customers, and also, and you treat them like customers. A lot of landlords don't, which bugs me. And the same thing with all your guys you work with. Everybody you work with, they're watching what you're doing, and you're watching what they're doing, and just treat everybody well, and pay on time. Have clean work sites, show up, ask good questions, and you can learn a ton. When I wanted to learn electrical, I didn't understand home wiring. I had bought a house with no wiring, and I had a friend who was an electrician, and I said, "Hey, can you wire this house for me? And can I be the helper?" And just stuck to him like glue. And after that house and one other one, I could do that. And there's a lot of skills when you build a group of people around you. There's so many skills you can learn, and you can do, even if you don't know anyone, just walking into a place of business and saying, I'll work for free, and just work for free for a while if you have time, and it's just work. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I answered your question there.
Yeah, no, and appreciate you started at a different time, but a lot of the lessons kind of pertain. You speak with a lot of landlords on a day-to-day basis now, young individuals that are getting into it or older individuals that are buying their first property. When you think about them getting started, what kind of advice do you provide to them to help make sure they don't get into sticky situations or have the wrong people around them as they're starting to build up that landlording portfolio?
Common sense. First of all, it's okay to say no. So if you run into someone, for example, I was looking for a CPA or an accountant to help me out. I do most of my own accounting, but I wanted a backstop. And I went and met an accountant, and I did the little interview. I was young, I was 30 years old or something. And I just didn't feel right. The energy wasn't there. Just something wasn't gelling. And actually, it's hard for me. I don't like confrontation like most folks. But I said to him, this doesn't feel right. I'm just going to be honest with you. And he goes, you know what? You might like this other guy I know. Give him a call. And so I called that guy up. And we've been friends now. Still, the problem is he's retiring and I need him to keep accounting. But by saying no and moving on to you'll find the energy of the folks that click, and then finding a landlords. solitary confrontational business. And if you don't find other landlords in your area to commiserate with, we used to meet for lunch. I had 5 or 6 other landlords. We'd meet for lunch every day at the same place, How Chinese restaurant, and just we'd roll in our trucks, 5 trucks. It's a buffet. We'd go in, have our lunch, talk about what's going on. And then one guy would be like, I really need a hand moving this, whatever, some big heavy thing. And we'll buzz over, give you a hand. And just having that community. Now, obviously I'm kind of out of it at this stage of my life, but I've talked to some groups here in town. We have I guess they call them mastermind groups here for young landlords. I got invited to speak to some of those guys, and that's what they're doing. They got involved. You can set it up in your own community. Just put a thing on Facebook. Hey, I'm doing a real estate landlord community, and 3 or 4 people are going to show up. And make sure you just don't deal with a nut. Now, when I went to one of these things, I could quickly tell out of the 5 guys that were sitting there, 2 of them were going to make it, 3 weren't. And the dirty little secret in landlording as a full-time career, very few people make it. And by make it, I mean get to the point where their buildings are generating enough cash flow that they can live their life. They've got free time. They can hire some stuff out, which you can't do in the early years. And it's very rare. So, I mean, there may be some questions around that because I've been doing this for 35 years.
Tell me more about that. So you said you quickly identified, what is that? Like, was it just the energy or kind of how they talked about it? What do you?
One of the questions my buddies and I would ask young guys that are getting started when they always want to take you lunch and pick your brain is, did you mow lawns when you were a kid? Were you out there hustling? We were talking about mowing lawns earlier, hustling. And if a kid's 10, 12, 13 years old and they're out there doing something to try to make some money and get things going, they've got that in their DNA. If you're just going into it, if you watch the gurus and they say you can do Section 8 and you can make $1 gazillion and you don't have to touch anything, it's all BS. It doesn't work that way. The truth is, it's a lot of work in the beginning. Now, I can digress a little bit. For 10 years, from 92 to 2012, I was working 18 hours a day, full stop boogie, got up to 120 units. And people are going to ask, how do you scale from 8 or 10 units and on? We can talk about that a little bit later. There's a lot of variables, but it can be done. I got up to 120 units, but it's an 18-hour a day nonstop. And if I hadn't taken a stop for a while, I'd probably be dead right now and divorced. I'd be divorced and dead. So you got to know when to have the gas on, and you have the gas on when you're young, which is what we're talking about today. How do you push the pedal right to the floor and launch? Because when you get to be about 45, 50, you can't maintain that level of energy of doing these properties over and over and over again. And that being said, during those 10 years, every morning when I woke up excited. I was ready to go out. I mean, this was the most fun thing I'd ever done in my life, turning these buildings over. Now that's one whole skill set is just turning buildings over. A second one is then dealing with the tenants. And then, the third one is dealing with the financing. The fourth is dealing with the accounting, taxes. There's a lot of stuff you have to do right. And if you go into it thinking you're going to hire all this out, or hire a property manager, we can talk about property managers, just don't do it. Back up, slow down, get your buildings going. Even if you have a full-time job, you still have 6 to 8 hours in the evenings. I know it doesn't sound fun, but what's Dave Ramsey say? Live like no one else today so you can live like no one else tomorrow, or something like along those lines. When you're young, you're driving the hoopty. I had a piece of junk Mazda GLC 2-door sedan. That was my first truck. I'm doing a truck video soon of my current truck, which is the Cadillac of landlord trucks. But trust me, I went through a lot of clunkers just to keep a sheet of plywood on top to get it to a job. And you sleep. When you buy a building, you don't live in the nicest unit. You live in the crappiest unit or the laundry room. You get the idea? Yeah. You do the hard stuff when you're young. And then as time goes by, trust me, you'll reap the rewards for that effort. Yeah, to a better word.
Yeah. I mean, you alluded to earlier not liking confrontation, and inherently as you're kind of going through, you get into some potentially challenging situations with tenants or contractors or those sorts of things. Can you maybe share a couple of experiences or ways that you've dealt with those challenging situations, or ideally not even got into them in the first place?
The first rule is a 24-hour rule. I got a couple of situations going on right now that are, because it never ends. The first rule is a 24-hour rule. So when someone calls you up and they're out of their mind screaming about something, you just either don't answer or answer and just, hey, that sounds like a lot. Let me give you a ring back tomorrow. And that takes care of 90% of problems. Because next thing you call and you find out that their kid got in trouble at school and they got some health issues and something else is going on, just do nothing for 24 hours. The next one is, you go to a door to knock to ask about rent or something. They open the door and it starts again, and let them go. And they'll scream at you for 10 minutes or whatever. I just sit there thinking about golf and sailing and other things, just waiting, calm, control my breathing. And then when it gets to the end, you say, Sally, what's really going on? Because you're a good tenant. You're not normally like this. And then she'll go on again for another 10 minutes. And you do it one more time until you get the tier. And once you get the tier, then you know what's really going on. Then she'll tell you, oh, I can't pay the rent because, and then you get the story, but there's something human going on with this person. And when you get to there, and if you can come up with a plan, and we talk a little bit about boundaries and stuff, I say, tell you what, I'll work. This is something I want to talk about. This idea of, especially if you're a small landlord, this idea of rent's due on the 1st, late on the 3rd, file on the 4th, evict on the 15th. For small landlords, you can't be going through this routine. You've got to bring these tenants in. They're tenants because they don't really manage their money well. So you have an opportunity to educate them on how to manage money. I actually had that Financial Peace University. I offered it to every tenant. I had 50 tenants. I said, you can do this course. It's a $100 course, Financial Peace. I will pay for it when you complete it. So you pay the $100. At the end, I'll give you $100. Guess how many took me up on it?
Not many.
0.
Okay.
Not one. They don't think like that. So you're thinking in your mind, this is how you would do things, and they just don't think that way. So when you get in that situation, I just say, what can you do? What's going on? Give me some dates. I'll write it. I carry a clipboard. I write it. Like I'll be carrying the same clipboard for 35 years. You write it down. They look at, okay, that's what you're going to do. And then if they do it, great. And if they do it and you get them through this tough patch, they will never, ever leave you. I've had tenants that were born in buildings, this one in particular I'm thinking of, and literally born. And at 23 years old, I tried to sell him the building. His family lived there forever. They just, once they have a landlord they can trust, and the trick is not to be taken advantage of. So you got this, I have a firm but fair policy, which is, I'll be firm. This is what you said you're going to do, and I'll be fair. But if you don't do your side of it, then I'm going to have to do the next step, which is the eviction process, which I've been through 160 some odd evictions, and people say, oh, that's a lot of evictions. You must be a terrible landlord. Most of those were early on when I bought buildings full of the worst people you could imagine, had to clean them out and then bring in new folks in. But even in the eviction process, there's a way to do it that is, sometimes you can rescue them, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And if you can, once again, they'll be with you for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in everything that I've seen from you in our previous conversations, you're very proactive and thoughtful around setting up to try and not get into those situations. So maybe share with me a little bit about how you start kind of from that screening point and then those monthly, quarterly, whatever interactions that you have with the tenant. So then hopefully you don't get to the spot where they aren't communicating when they don't pay rent, or you're almost forced to have that eviction conversation.
The number one thing, and one of the mistakes I made early on was I bought little houses, duplexes, fourplexes, and I had property spread. Well, most of it was in one neighborhood, and some were spread around town. And for me, I would basically go to every property every day. That was my job. I just get in the truck in the morning. You'd always have 1 or 2 turnovers going on, so you'd end up there around 10 o'clock in the morning. But you'd roll by properties during the day, pop in the laundry rooms, and you just start. The tenants see you, and your common areas. And I'll get to the mistake in a second. The common areas is the one spot where you can. That's where their mailbox is, the entryway, the front door. Keeping that stuff painted, clean, smelling nice. It just sets the tone that you're a landlord that cares. And as a leader, because you're basically a leader, you need to set the tone. And when they see you walking around picking up a piece of garbage off their walkway, they make a mental note, and that permeates through all your properties. the struggle I had was as I got bigger and I needed to hire maintenance people and I wanted to travel more, I couldn't get a maintenance man to get his head around doing that, going property to property, having that same level of care as an owner would have. And if you've got 8 to 10 units, you can stop in there once or twice a week and just look around, make sure the furnace is good and stuff like that. But I couldn't find that. If I had a do-over, I would have bought larger complexes sooner, which are paradoxically easier to buy because the amount of buyers in the 1 to 4 units are a lot, but in the United States, at least, because you get FHA financing for those. From 5 units to 100 units, it's bank financing, usually 20% down. And from 100 units on up, you're looking at commercial guys. That's a whole different animal. But in that sweet spot, when you have a 20, 40, 60 unit apartment complex, you can afford to hire a manager that lives on site. A maintenance guy lives on site, usually her husband. And that now you've got the same faucets, the same bathtubs, the same flooring, the same paint, much easier. To kind of digressed a little bit there, but what was the question?
No, it's good. So maybe go back a bit to talk about the screening process. So,
Oh, screening.
like when you're thinking of before someone moves in, what do you go through to help mitigate any sort of risk of having the wrong person in the unit?
The first thing is I try to bring tenants up from within tenants that I already have. So, for example, we have a unit right now out in the valley. It's in a house. It's a duplex. I have a 40-unit apartment complex out there. So I call my manager out there and say, hey, do you have anybody in the building that would be a good fit for this house, which is a little nicer spot? And then we'll move somebody from there over to there. If I'm just going cold, and in Alaska, when you put an ad out for something for rent, you'll get 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 applications really fast. It's challenging. One of the ways I screen right off the bat is when they call, the first question is, how soon are you looking to rent? And they say, oh, I'm looking for a place for next month or this spring or something like that. And they tell you what, these turn over really fast. Now you've just saved yourself some time and move on. If they want to rent too quick, that's a flag because they're being evicted or something's happening. So that's a flag. But you'll find those ones that are just, they need to rent. I'll list them on the 15th or something, look for the first of the month, 2 weeks away, not 2 or 3 months away. And at that point, I'll generally pre-screen them on the phone, just normal questions. Where do you work? We have a rent to income ratio. I like to do 2.5 to 3 times rent to income. So if you make $3,000 a month, you can afford $1,000 a month apartment. And that'll screen out a bunch of people right there. I don't charge for, which a lot of people do these days, I guess. I don't charge application fees or anything. I just take the applications, the little one I printed up off the internet ages ago. And then if I have a lot of people do it, I'll schedule an open house. So this gets back to having your time in some kind of control. So if you're kind of like, oh, I'll meet you at 2, I'll meet you at 6, I'll meet you at 10, it's crazy. So I was like, I'll be there from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I got a number of people showing up. You want to come at 6:15 or 6:30, and then I'll set them up. Now, as they're coming through, they're seeing other cars coming and going. So now you've got the fear of missing out thing going on. And if someone's going to make a decision, they're going to make a decision, pretty quick with apartments. And the number one thing I had to get used to doing was asking for the money. So when they're there, and this gets back to your sales experience, when they're there and they're looking around, you can tell that they're right on the edge. Just ask. Do you have the deposit now? Would you like to deposit that, these days, Venmo or Cash App or whatever? And they'll trip over the edge, and then you move a good tenant in. I do check references. Never trust the former landlord. Number one, I get calls from landlords. Hey, you were the former landlord of so-and-so. I'm like, why are you calling me? If I want to get rid of them, I'm going to give a glowing recommendation. So don't trust them. Get on. I want to do a video for tenants. We look at your Facebook pages. We looked at LinkedIn. We looked at all your social media stuff. Just have it cleaned up and looking good. When you show up, I look at the car. If the car is clean and that's all great. I mean, I had one decision. I remember I was in a upstairs unit showing apartments. I don't do that much anymore. And a guy pulls in with his wife. They park in front. I'm watching him. He's got a cigarette and he flicks it out the window onto the lawn. And I made my decision right there. Not going to do it. So, and trust your gut. If your gut's telling you, I trust my gut a lot in this business. And sometimes people look a little sideways, but they'll end up being your best tenants because they really need a place. And if you're cool with them and you're nice and they've got income, and my folks, working folks. He would work at the airport on the line or something. She would work at a gas station. Together, they make 4 or 5,000 a month. They're doing fine. They could afford a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, and they could go fishing and do a trip once a year. Those were my people. And another paradox is early on, folks think I'm going to buy rental property in the nice area because those are going to be better tenants. Those are your worst tenants. The nice apartments, those people, they have money, they got jobs, and they're going to buy a house in 18 to 24 months. And you're going to have a lot of turnover. If you focus on these areas that are on the edge of the bad part of town and the medium part of town that are on their way up, hoping on their way down, this is what I did anyway. You find that neighborhood, that's your bread and butter. That's where tenants live. You can buy the buildings a lot cheaper because folks in the other neighborhoods, they're paying a premium with the thought that they're going to get this super great tenant. So they're out of the market. You're down here. No one wants these fourplexes in this little, what's an adjective that doesn't offend anybody? These little crappy neighborhoods. But when you go in there in these little bad neighborhoods and you start doing your thing and cleaning up, a funny thing happens. First of all, your property starts looking better. I call it full perimeter lighting. I put lights all around these buildings. When you drive by a Burco property, it's illuminated. The grounds are clean. And then the other owners of houses around you start coming over to talk to you. And I've bought more places from owners who were living out of state. They had hired a property manager. Things were going bad. They just wanted to get out. And they see me doing my thing. And I talk to them. And next thing you know, you bought another fourplex. That's happened numerous times.
Yeah. So when you have the person that you talked a bit earlier about like trying to keep them happy, like any other tips around keeping those tenants as like they truly are customers, right? We want to make sure they're happy and you want to make sure that they're paying an appropriate rent. Like maybe talk about when do you judge between should I increase the rent on this person? Like I may be able to extract more on the market versus trying to keep Paul in the building a little bit longer because he's been paying his rent. Like there's a fine balance around that. And so how do you think through that in your scenario?
I generally, I stick with, I don't do bulk rent increases. I did that one time because I really was way under market. I try to stay just under market. So, and how do you find the market? You go and pretend you're a tenant, get on Facebook Marketplace. That seems to be where everybody goes these days. Look at apartments for rent, call a few of them, see if they even answer the phone, which they probably don't. Look at a few of them, see what your competition is, and then get an idea what market rent is. Put yourself in the tenant's head. I did this with Section 8 as well. If you're in the States, we have Section 8 housing, which I've had actually pretty good experience with. I went down to the Section 8 office and they actually have a class for people who want to get Section 8. So I went to the class and I sat in as a landlord to learn what they were being taught on how to get an apartment. Now, funny enough, I got to meet 2 or 3 of the people there. I think I pulled a few tenants out of that experience, but I learned the paperwork and everything else. So looking at everything through the tenant's eye and what they're looking for, number one, and what they're willing to pay. I try to stay just below market. If the market's $1,000 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath place, I'll go down to 900. I know the country's wide. I'm making these numbers up. I know the country varies widely on what market rents are. I try to stay just under. The other thing I try to be very aware of is as markets do change. And when they do, if you can keep your leverage low and be able to shift down, sometimes shifting down is more important than shifting up, just to hold, because you're trying to hold on to these things for 30 years, 40 years. And I've done that. And you're going to have up and down markets. When you have an up market, I raise slowly. A down market, I just dink real fast. And how do I know it's a down market? If I put an ad out for an apartment at a certain price and I don't have 3 or 4 or 5 people wanting it right away, I drop the price, $100. If I don't get any response, drop it again. Get the apartment full, because $1,000 a month apartment, which you could rent for $8, if it stays vacant for 2 or 3 months, it's going to take you a year to a year and a half to get that back. So get the thing full. And then if in 6 or 8 months you want to raise the rent a little bit, raise the rent a little bit. My other thing is when I've got buildings have vibes. I've got a 8-unit complex here in town, and the upstairs, all 8 people get along great. Everyone's friendly. They all like each other. They keep the place clean. I'm not touching anything up there. I just want those people to stay and do their thing. The building has decent cash flow, and don't rock that boat, because you're going for cash flow, but the long game is to hold these things and get them paid off. And once they're paid off, and pretty much almost out of the whole debt side of this thing, your cash flow goes through the roof. And you can refinance these things at that point in time, or you can take out what I've done as time went by. You've got a big property paid off. You can get a line of credit against that property. Then at that point, you're in like level 3 landlording, which is another property comes on the market. You walk in, I'll pay cash. You buy it. No nothing. I just walk in, write a check, get the property, then redo my thing, refinance it. Classic Burr, refinance it, credit line, go do it again. And that's your longer goal. Cash flow keeps you going, but paying these things off. And appreciation, I never bet on appreciation. So I bought buildings based on cash flow. Will they carry themselves and make some money? And if that's a yes, and if there's appreciation after that, bonus. But I've watched guys that have paid retail for buildings and they say, well, I'm going to make $200,000 or $300,000 in appreciation, yada, yada, yada. And it doesn't work out. This gets back to the Airbnb conversation we were having a little bit earlier, on basing your numbers on what you think the potential revenue is of Airbnb, which I've done several of. It has worked, but if Airbnb goes sideways on you and the building won't carry itself with a regular tenant, you're in a tough spot.
Yeah. So what are those mistakes that you're seeing that new landlords are making when they're
hiring property managers? Number one, buying out of state real estate. Number two, number three, not getting involved in the actual process of turning over these first 2 or 3 or 4 buildings that they have. Those 3 things. When you first get your building, getting in there and doing all the dirt work, I mean, the really crappy jobs, and learning all these trades, I found it fun. But even if you don't want to do that for your whole life, that's not how you're wired. You want to be more of a behind the office kind of guy down the road. That's great. But when you've done this for 20 or 30 units and you figured it all out, your ability to talk to contractors and suppliers and vendors and tenants and have some idea of what these trades are about and speak the language. So when you're talking to a plumber, you can explain, are you using what kind of HVAC? Is that a Wheel McLean boiler? Is that a Burnham? What kind of pumps are you putting on here? They hear you talking like that. They know what you're talking about, and they will, probably give you a little bit better bid. And if nothing else, they're just fun to hang out with and become friends with.
Yeah.
The property manager thing, I get this all the time. I'm going to buy a property and I'm going to hire a manager and I'm just going to work my day job and it's going to be smooth as silk. And I can go on about property. I don't know if you want to go on about property managers for a while. There's a paradox here as well that at some point in time, you can't keep doing this stuff day to day. I don't really do much anymore with the day to day. I have a property manager. She works for me. So she's not with a real estate company that charges a percentage of your rents. No, she's employed by me and I've trained her. She uses my systems and we work great together. My maintenance man, same thing. I hire him. He's on my payroll. And I always thought payroll was sorcery. Payroll is really easy. Put them on, let them do their jobs, support them. And this is, and on the business side of it, a lot of landlords get this idea in their head that they're the king, the lord of the land, and everyone else is below them and subservient. I had this one guy working for me, Steve, and every time I'd walk in the room, this guy would like crumble shaking. And I finally said, Steve, what's going on? I mean, every time I walk in this room, you're about to freaking, pee your pants. And, well, you're the boss. And I go, Steve, do you know who I work for? He goes, no, you're the boss. I go, no, Steve, I work for you. My job is to support you. And who do you work for? I work for you. No, you don't work for me. You work for the tenants. Your job is to support them. So let's get this relationship right so that I can support you. This is basic business. This is not to landlording. This is just a way to run a business. Once he got that frame in his noggin, he was great. But, that's, again, even if you only have 4, 8, or 10, 12 units, this is a great testing ground to work on your leadership skills, how you're going to organize things. It works with tenants, same philosophy with tenants. Just do your job. There you go. Now, and out-of-state investing. And I got one couple I follow, and they're really cool. I won't mention their names, but you'll find them on TikTok. You've seen them. Their whole shtick is out-of-state investing. And I'm watching this stuff, and I'm just going, it doesn't work. I just got called down to Arizona a few weeks ago our kids were building out a coffee shop, and they hired a contractor, the whole thing. And the contractor, predictably, was going way over budget, doing a crappy job. They had to let him go. He calls me up, hey, almost in tears. And I go, do you need me to come down? He goes, yes. So I flew down there, did the job. Now he had three other guys, another kind of subcontractor there helping, and myself. We did it in 23 days. This is going to be a 3 to 6 month project. And if you're not there on site and you don't know the trades and you can't speak the language and you're hiring these contractors cold, just a common kitchen is going to cost you $20,000. And you can't make money that way. You can't survive that way, especially if you tag on electrical, plumbing, heating systems, roofing, painting, all this stuff. It just doesn't work. So it's hard enough to do it in your own backyard. But if you're trying to do this in another state, and I feel for some folks, because you're in states where it's next to impossible to buy rental property right now that works. It's just math. And you're thinking, well, if I go over to another state, which is a little more landlord friendly, maybe I can make it work. If you're going to be a professional full-time landlord, just move to the other state. There's a couple other ways you could get around that I would do if I was in that situation, but we can talk about that if you want to.
So do you find, so those individuals that are looking to get in, I mean, I'm in San Francisco, it's a really challenged rental market right now. So, people that are in a spot where, they aren't in a spot where you can cash flow properties that they could afford.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think of them trying to then get in or expand a portfolio if maybe they have an Airbnb or one unit that is like working? Are you thinking of building that community and being kind of a money partner or kind of working in on those sorts of things? What are you seeing that's actually working within your space these days for those really challenged markets?
Well, to be honest, I don't know challenged markets because I haven't experienced them much. I've got some experience in Arizona, some in Florida. One thing I know for sure, there's always areas that are downtrodden, beaten up, and need rehabbing or rehabilitation, and people don't want to go into them. That's the first direction I would go. So if I was in Florida and I was in Fort Pierce, I would go west of A1A. I would find those old cinder block houses built in the 1950s and 60s. And I would find the ones that were all, hoarder, beat up lots and start trying to figure out how to buy those if I could do it. I would, if you can find, I had no money when I started. I mean, less than zero. I arrived in Alaska with student loan debt, and I think I had $3,000 in my pocket. And I bought that junky car, and I got my bed literally out of a dumpster in Eagle River. It was a nice bed, and that's how I started. And I didn't have any money, but I knew somebody who did. That was my now brother-in-law. But way back then, we were friends from Florida. I knew he had money. He worked in the tech industry, and he did really well. And I said, Gary, can you pony up the funds to buy this fourplex? And I'll do all the work. Now, if you can find someone like that and just go ask, if you can get over the first deal, you're gold. And I think you and I talked a little bit about the developer you're working with. And, as you've built trust over the years, you'll do more and more deals with him.
Right.
That was my experience. I got somebody to help me do my first deal. And then once that deal was done, we did a second deal on a 12-unit apartment complex. And after that, our deal, and I just made this up. Our deal was 50-50 cash flow. He puts the full down payment down. We split everything down the middle. When we go to sell the building, he gets his initial investment back first. Then we split everything beyond that. And it just worked. It was just really simple. We bought a fourplex and a 12plex that way. And after that, I started buying little houses, and he would loan me the money at 15% interest. Nice brother-in-law. But I was happy to get it. I could buy these little houses, for a third market value because they were in such bad condition. And then I'd fix them up, get them appraised, refinance them. I would not pay him back. I would take that money and go buy 2 or 3 more of them. This is how I actually scaled, was just moving as fast as I could to buy, fix up, refinance, and then buy the next property. And It was literally the same process over and over and over again. I think about 50 times.
Wow. That's awesome.
So let me get back to challenging markets. The other thing about some states, and I don't deal in finding landlord friendly states as opposed to non-landlord friendly states. If you're in a non-landlord friendly state, it's tough. So And I personally, I wouldn't do it because that level of I with tenants, you can either be enemies, confrontational, or you can walk side by side. I like to walk side by side. So I go into a relationship saying, hey, I got this apartment. You need a place to live. I'm going to do all these things to keep the outside nice and you safe and warm. All I'm asking from you to do is pay your rent on time, be a good neighbor. Great. We're doing this together. If there's a problem, hey, I thought we were friends. Let's work this thing out. And I'm coming from that angle. When you're in a state
What if
where
it gets
people
really bad? Like
oh,
you hear situations where it escalates quickly. Like you're a nice guy, but
I've had
sometimes
guns
things go.
pulled on me, so yeah, I've gone all the way to the extreme. When you're in the extreme, you just cut your losses. I've had you asked that earlier as well. When you've got a tenant who's violent, angry, dangerous, whatever it happens to be, it's just by the book. So literally, rent's due on the first, and I had one guy. I bought a building, and it was bad news. And I went right down this. It's the same process. You file. He doesn't pay the rent. You file the notice. Even if he does pay the rent, you give him a 30-day notice. And I only do month-to-month rental agreements for this reason. I do not do leases, yearly leases. We can talk about that if you want in a bit. Give him a 30-day notice or a 7-day notice in Alaska. On the 8th day, I go in, I file the paperwork, and then you go to the court. He probably doesn't show up. If he does show up, great. You just get the order. You file the thing. You go down the path. For those of you that have never done an eviction, for your first one, hire an attorney. And then stick to that attorney like glue. The forms are all available online. He'll walk you through the whole process. And that's what we did the first time, my buddies and I. We just hired an attorney, we went down the list, got all the forms, learned how to do it, put them in a notebook. So we had them all. As a matter of fact, I just did an eviction the other day. This is my checklist. I don't know if you can see that or not. My checklist of the forms that I need to do it. And I just go down the list, fill them out. It takes about 20 minutes. I go submit them. Then in the worst case scenario, you don't go there. The troopers show up to change the locks. You call one of your landlord friends, those guys I had lunch with at How, to be the one to meet over there. So you're not there in physical danger. And off you go. This one particular guy, he was going to move the next morning. And I told one of the tenants in the downstairs unit, it's a 3-story complex. I told her, hey, listen, right around 8 o'clock tonight, I want you to turn the water off to the building because the water shut off was in her apartment. So 8 o'clock that night, she turns the water shut off. I got a phone call at 9 o'clock at night from the guy. Where's the water? Oh, no problem. I'll be there in the morning. Take care of it first thing. And he had to be out the next morning. So he was gone the next morning. And sure enough, I went to his apartment and he had plugged every drain with towels and was preparing to flood the entire building, that night. Yeah. Nice guy.
Wow.
So, but we caught that. And then if you do have big go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it. Go for it.
No.
I was going to say that in the conversations I have with landlords and things, one of the things that constantly comes up is, oh, I made an exception, and then it comes back and bites them.
No, it's going to happen.
Yeah. So how do you think through those scenarios as far as when to give a bit more grace and when to then just say, no, I got to be by the book?
It's I always have a charity case going on. I've got one right now. He's about 3 months behind in rent and major health issues. He's been a tenant in this particular building for 22 years.
Oh, wow.
And I had to call him at the beginning of last month and say, dude, we're 3 months behind. You got to get some help. And there's 8 out there. And I give him the numbers. We have Daybreak up here. We have different church organizations and state and local, whatever stuff to help people out. Call these people up. If they're doing that kind of work, they'll do it if they want to stay. And I said, just please don't put me in the position. This is priming. Don't put me in the position next month on the 1st where I've got to evict you because I don't want to do that. We've been friends a long time, but this is a business and I can't just keep it going. This is like 3 weeks ago. He goes, and by the way, at first he was yelling. He goes, I'm going to turn you in for this and turn you in for that. I go, what are you talking about? First of all, if you're going to turn me in for something around this building, turn me in. Call code enforcement, call whoever it happens to be, get them on in here. Happy to talk to them. And so that just obviated. And by the way, that's another reason why you keep your buildings nice and you have good relationships with your city because they get to know you down there. Code enforcement guys know who you are. They know how you do things. And they're going to, they'll work with you if you're cool. If you're not cool, by the way, they know it as well. If you're cutting a lot of corners. But once
So
we
be
got over
cool.
that
Yeah.
and he calmed down, back to the 24-hour thing. Once he calmed down, and then he said, "Oh, well, I got stuff to pawn. I got this. I got that. I'll work it out." And okay, I'll tell you what. You have till the first. See what's going on. First rolls around, which by the way, today's 31st. And he texted me today and he sends me pictures of he's got some heart issue and he's got some healing problems. He sent me some pictures and I said, "Dude, I feel sorry for you, praying for you. What's the situation?" He goes, "Hey, I'm going to sell my truck. I got this, I got that." And so in that situation, I've known him for a long time and
Right.
I would have filed for eviction. I told him I would if we got to the 4-month mark. And that was a hard boundary. And he respected that. And hopefully we'll get caught up. Other times, more times than not, it does work out when I've been a little generous. But again, you've got to sit back and look at the situation. And you know the apartment, you know how they keep it, you know their situation, you know everything about these people. If your gut says, "Yeah, I can get them through this," great. If it doesn't, cut your losses quick. Just file your paperwork, go down the track. And folks understand, evictions are very confrontational and it's stressful. But if you present it right, if you present it to them, I put a little letter on top and I put the thing on the door so the neighbors don't see an eviction notice sitting on their door. I put a little letter on top and make it neat so it just looks like a piece of paper. And then I call them and talk with them and they'll come up with a plan, but they won't do the plan. They'll go to court. And when they get to court, and this is very important, you talk to them outside the courthouse before going in. And I say 95% of folks that I've had to deal with evictions with, I've been able to sit down and talk to because we've had a relationship building up to this. The ones you can't talk to, they don't even show up anyway. But those you talk to and you say, "What can you do?" "Well, I could be out by the 20th. Okay. How about we make it the 25th? Give them a few extra days. You've already lost it anyway. Now they're in the right frame of mind. You go in the courthouse and you just tell the judge, "Oh, Your Honor," when he calls your case, "we've already reached an agreement." And then your case is over. The other thing that happens, what's that?
Do you paper it like when you come to the agreement? Do you put it down in writing, dual signature?
Yeah. The judge will do that. He'll actually close the case and say, "Okay, your agreement is they'll be out by the 25th." And then he'll say, "Okay, you have a judgment for possession for the 25th at 5 p.m. And by the way, the judges get to know you too as a landlord. So, if you behave well and you appear normal, it's not a very tough process. And evictions are just a mill. But if you find yourself in a situation where you are in a court situation and they are arguing against you, I'll tell every young landlord, do not say a thing. Just they're going to call your case. He's going to ask you 10 questions. Do you owe the property? Are they past due in rent? Yes. He's going to ask them, you live at the property? Yes. Do you owe past due rent? Yes. Everything else they say after that doesn't matter. An eviction case is just about rent. So the judge will let them talk for 20 minutes if they want to. Just sit there quietly and wait. And at the very end, the judge is going to say, "Well, you have admitted that you passed due in rent," and then that's the end of the case. So I hear so many landlords, they get to court, they think they're Perry Mason, and they're just going to talk and talk and talk and talk, and you'll talk yourself right out of winning the thing. Just keep your mouth closed. I'm good at that, believe it or not.
Yeah. We had a comment here in the chat. It's you kind of allude to this. We talked about this before. It's like, "Oh, you mentioned being friends with tenants," I think, versus other people say, "Oh, just be friendly." And I think I interpret that as being a fairly similar thing, right?
You're not coming over for Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Type of thing. No, it's friendly. Yeah, that person made a good observation.
Yeah.
You're not friends.
Yeah.
And that gets back to, your time early on. Now times have changed, but early on, my phone would ring 24 hours a day, and I had to somehow, as I have a wife and kids, and the time with them is super important. So I had to put a cutoff, which was 9 to 5. And what I did for boundary setting was, if you called me at 5:07 at night, "Is this an emergency?" I won't even answer them anymore. I just go to voicemail. Like, "Is this an emergency?" "No, please call me back tomorrow morning at 9:00. Click, hang up. It's not nice, Paul. Very cold. This was back in my younger days. If they called at 4:57 and they said, "Hey, Paul, I got nicest guy in the world. Yeah, I'll be out there tomorrow. Take care of it for you. No problem at all." Boom, boom, boom. And you quickly set the tone. And you're going to have, when you get a lot of units, you're going to find there are some tenants that are just lonely. And if you are affable and you're friendly, they're going to start calling you just to come over, just to fix stuff, just so they can chat. You got to just really narrow that. And one thing I did early on, I always wore headphones when I was working, or earmuffs for sound.
Yeah.
And if a tenant would come up to me to start talking in the hallway, I would just go like this, and I'd wait, and they talk, and I'd answer the question. That just said, "This is a short conversation,"
Right.
because they'll talk your ears off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the end of time here. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I see Karen had dropped one in here. They were interested, Paul, in your thoughts around cash for keys. So we're
Yeah,
offered
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe just talk about that for a second.
Cash for keys is huge. Particularly if you buy a building and you've got, say 4 units and they're all full of it's just a disaster, and you want to get in there and clean the whole thing out and get them gone. We had a situation like this in the neighborhood I'm talking about. It was my buddy's building, and he just went in and he said, "We're having a family meeting. Everybody outside." All 4 units came outside. There must have been 30 kids running around and adults. And he goes, "Here's my offer." I forget what the number was. It wasn't a lot. It was a couple, 500 or 1,000. This is back in 92 or 93, but it was enough. And he goes, "If you're all gone and this place is empty, you don't have to clean up anything. Just get your stuff by this date." And they were so excited, and off they went. And yeah, do cash for the bigger thing is take the loss. You want to lose a few battles, but win the war. And you're fighting a war. You're going to lose battles. That's just part of the deal. And I had one friend who, this is very important. He had an apartment, a house. He rented it. He loved that house. They had lived in it. He rented it. The person destroyed it or made it pretty bad. And it was in his psyche. He could not let this go. He chased this woman down for 2 years, hired lawyers, spent a fortune, never got the money all back. But for 2 years, every conversation we had was about this tenant and how she him over. And in my head, I'm going, that's 2 years you wasted. You could have been doing deals. You could have been buying other things. You could just draw a line, put that behind the line, and just keep going forward, because you're not going to win with that mentality of just the anger. And it'll tear you up if you take this stuff personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing I'd add to that is, if you are in a cash for keys situation or one of these other things, like hire some legal help to understand, because we see people that come to us, they're dealing with cash for keys. There's some legality around it. So similar to what you were talking about, hire an attorney first time, or a paralegal first time you go through an eviction. If you're dealing with something like cash for keys, talk to some people that have done it before. Tap into that community and probably get some legal help to understand what's actually allowed,
especially
and you should take.
If you're in a Massachusetts, New York, California, any of these states, guys, be super careful. Alaska is very it's I would call it fair. It's fair to the tenants, it's fair to the landlords, and it's hard to do funny business in both directions. But I know I've heard landlords have gotten in really terrible situations. So listen to that guy. He's right.
Yeah, unfortunately, deal with this. This is great. So if you have other questions, we got a couple minutes left here. Feel free to drop them in the chat. Paul, I've asked you a bunch of questions. I know you do a lot of these types of conversations, and sharing is critical to what you believe. Landlords getting into this today, you mentioned masterminds and things before, but what are some other tricks that you have for someone that is working a full-time job to try and, one, build out their team, and then two, build out their community, knowing that they don't have 20 units where they can kind of quit their job at that point in time?
Well, I'm assuming that person's in their 20s or early 30s, and they've got time. So you've got your job, your day job, and it goes till 5 o'clock, whatever. You're going to be tired. But when you get home, eat and get out there. First of all, just buy a building. Just buying. I had one friend of mine, and he'll probably listen to this. And for so long, he kept talking. I finally go, dude, buy a building. And he finally bought a building. And then all of a sudden, it all became real. Now he's figuring it out. And then he's going through that same process I mentioned earlier, meeting people and so on. So I would say, go into it first. You need to have a place to live. And in the States, I would go look to buy a fourplex. Not the greatest place. Live in it if you have to for 2 years. I think it's the 2-year owner-occupied thing now. Well, I can't really say much about owner-occupied, but do the time you got to do in that particular building. And then buy another fourplex, same thing with a FHA, buy another fourplex or a triplex. They don't want to see you go from house to fourplex. They want to see you go from fourplex down, 3, 2, 1. You can get up to 12 units that way, maybe even 14, just working the FHA low down payment thing. And for a lot of folks, if you can get that going and figure that out and let it sit for 30 years and percolate, you're done. You're going to end up down the track. Now, I don't know what the future holds for anybody, but I know this: no matter what's happening in AI or anything else or technology, people still are going to need a place to live. So it's going to be rock steady. I know for me, as time went by, I started buying businesses. I learned that businesses are a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more opportunity to increase cash flow based on what you do. That's a whole other conversation. But even through COVID, the businesses suffered, but the real estate, chunk, chunk, chunk every month, nothing changed. So real estate as the bedrock of your portfolio, those 12 to 20 units, if you can get to them, and then you can do other opportunities will start to present themselves if you start looking for them. I didn't until I was later in life. That's another story.
Yeah. Pretty specific question here for you. What about the judgment? So after the eviction happens, do you find that you take people to court to try and get the money, or how are you trying to actually recover if you do end up getting the judgment?
In Alaska, we have a thing called the permanent fund dividend. So every citizen of Alaska gets a check every year, somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a year. So basically, right after the court, you go in, you file an affidavit to attach that, and then when the PFD comes around, you'll get paid back out of that. Now, I did that for a couple of years. I finally said to myself, I stopped doing that. I just said, you know what, it's my bad for losing $1,000 or whatever, and I just walk away from it and stay focused on positive things. But basically, that's how we do it up here. And chasing bad money in my world is just bad juju. Try to avoid getting yourself in a situation where you're chasing bad money. How's that for an answer?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple questions here. Yeah, there's a couple questions here about debt. I mean, obviously it's going to depend a lot. There's a question about California, like states like New York, California, you're in a position where it takes a lot longer to get an individual out. So you can accrue quite a bit of debt. But I'd say like there's a lot of options out there. I mean, obviously I'm with Front Lobby, so you can report the rental data to the credit bureaus. It's a really good option. There's collections agencies. There's other legal avenues that you can try and go after that if that makes sense for you. But I mean, a lot of it's focused on some of that practical aspect.
This is something I learned from you, which I didn't understand, and this happened to me once, like with Front Lobby. If you're reporting to credit agencies, and I had a tenant who got way behind, and I got a judgment or something on her at one point in time, but she went to buy a house down the road.
Yeah.
And she called me up and said, hey, can I pay this off, this debt, out of the blue? And I didn't know why. It was because it had made its way into her credit file, which I think a service that you guys offer, which actually I'm kind of interested in because it would be a good thing to be able to do this easy. Yeah. And she actually showed up. She owed me like $11,000, and now she just peeled it off and paid the debt and went and got her house. So
it's a good way to put pressure. And I mean, as you said earlier, I like that advice. You kind of got to move on. Like you can't obsess over the negative tenant and let it destroy the rest of your portfolio. Kind of putting the debt on, doing a couple things that try and help make sure it is, but you got to continue to operate the rest of your portfolios and make sure that you're going forward.
I will say also, I've been doing the same thing for 35 years with a spreadsheet that I wrote in 1992. Things like Front Lobby, I've just gotten exposed to, Turbo Tenant. There's some other Buildrium, and I'm tempted to dip my toes in it, only because there is opportunity. The only thing I don't like about those is if you get too automated and too distant from your tenants, you lose that, particularly for the small landlord, you lose that kind of connection to your properties, what's going on, the vibe of the building, what people are doing. So there's probably a lot of people listening to this that know a lot more about that than I do. All I'll say is everything gets back down to fundamentals, and the fundamentals are you're selling a service, you got a customer, just make sure you keep that relationship going, no matter how you do it with technology. And I think there's a lot of ways that make things a lot easier these days. Plus, you guys have YouTube, which anything you have a problem with, you got a furnace that's not firing and it's got a code, you enter it in YouTube, there's the answer. I mean, you guys have it made. We didn't even have stores back then, just Ace Hardware. No Home Depot, no Lowe's, no Costco. So good on you guys. Take advantage of it. Oh, and by the way, when everyone else is on their phone at night scrolling and you're out there buying, it's a super opportunity, I think, for young folks to have an edge because people are very distracted these days.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we hit the hour mark, and Paul, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time. There'll be people that will want to connect with you. How would you like them to connect with you? Is there kind of resources that you offer? Go ahead and plug something or what? Yeah. How you like to
Basically,
reach out?
I try to answer all my emails. So it's just, you can go to onehappylandlord.com and there's a little landlord store there you can take a look at, which has some things I use regularly that I kind of stuck on there. That does help. Or you just email me at onehappylandlord@gmail.com. It's that simple. And I do read them all and I do try to reply to all of them. I'm not selling anything at this point in time, but I am enjoying sharing this because I wish I had someone to share this with me way back when. And that's kind of the motivation behind the whole thing. Someday there'll be something, or maybe you have a deal, and who knows, we can work something out. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Paul. It's been great to speak with you. I appreciate you sharing all your insights you've garnered over the years. It's always a pleasure to speak with someone that's found a way to build in this wonderful industry. So thanks again.
Yep. And I'm switching over, by the way, if you can follow on YouTube, that's where I'm kind of moving all the content because I never intended it to be the Instagram, TikTok thing. So hop over to One Happy Landlord on YouTube and subscribe, and they'll motivate me when I get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm 200 away to on YouTube. It's tough on YouTube to start doing some long form content from questions that you guys provide, which helps.
Amazing. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time to join. Paul, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and
Yep.
we'll see you all soon. Thanks.
Had a great time. Thanks a lot, guys. And thanks, Yvonne, if you're out there, for putting this all together.